Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to look at some additional must-have comic books from my favorite character, that being Spider-Man. More than 6,000, close to 7,000 of you saw the first video, and if you happen to miss it, I definitely want to encourage you to go back and check it out. But almost 7,000 of you voted by your views for another installment, so we are going to do it. And I have a nice stack of books that are here on the table, some raw, some graded, and then a handful of honorable mentions, because I could not resist the temptation of cramming more into this. With that said, the very first book that I'm going to show you it's just a cool cover, right? It is the third ongoing series featuring Spider-Man Peter Parker, but it has a really awesome cover, and so I wanted to include that. This is Web of Spider-Man. I do believe that this is a painted cover from Vess. I think that's how you say his name. Just a cool cover. Back in the day, this was basically one of the few Spider-Man books that I could afford, right? Because it was relatively inexpensive. No one was really interested in Web of Spider-Man, but I picked them up, I read them, and I enjoyed them. And this is issue number 1. I have a couple of copies of that. None of them are graded, but just a really cool book. This next book is also from the Web of Spider-Man volume, but this one is a book that wasn't all that important until, I want to say, a couple of years ago, when it was retcons that what happened in this book had some significance. And retconning is essentially where a writer basically rewrites history. It may stand for reconstruction, I don't know, but it's called a retcon. This is the first cameo appearance of Eddie Brock, and I think his hand in a shadow basically appear in this one. This is Web of Spider-Man issue number 18. I just throw this in there because I just think it's a hilarious story, but it's also an example of how some things that happened in past books and past issues could make a book suddenly important where it wasn't important before. I definitely do not consider that a key comic, but it is a cool piece of history. And again, it's a title no one cared about that suddenly people started to care about just because Eddie Brock's hand in shadow was there. This next book is another really cool book, but it is an ugly cover. It is potentially one of the worst Silver Age Spider-Man covers that there is. There are several, don't get me wrong, but this is one of them. I want to interrupt the video for just 1 second to let you know about the sponsor of this video, My Slabs. There is a link down in the description. Check them out when you get a chance, because many of the books that you are going to see in this video are actually available for sale on that website. Not only do they have graded books, but they have raw books and they have raw lots. Check them out using the link. This right here is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 31. In addition to being an awful cover, this is also the first appearance of a couple of really important characters, that being Gwen Stacy and also Harry Osborn. So I'm not quite sure how this cover came to be, but it is not my jam. Let's just say that, even though it is a red cover, not my jam at all. Speaking of not my jams, the label on this one is not my jam. Love the book, don't like the label. My fault, it came back with a purple label. This is Amazing Spider-Man annual issue number 1. This is the first appearance of the Sinister Six, which was comprised of several different characters that you'll see on the cover that may also at some point appear in a movie, because this has been a rumor for a very long time. But there you go. Amazing Spider-Man annual issue number 1. Purple label, came back a 1.8. So cool book nevertheless. Regardless of the grade, it is definitely a cool book. This next book I'll show you because I think that it's important and ties with what we just looked at a second ago in terms of the first appearance of Gwen Stacy. This is her death. And her death is important because it changed in a lot of ways how Spider-Man Peter Parker was operating, how he was thinking. Like Uncle Ben's death, Gwen Stacy's death had an impact on him. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue 121. And so Definitely a cool book right here. The cover isn't the greatest, but it's a significant book. And again, Gwen Stacy had a huge impact on Peter's life. So I wanted to make sure that I showed that book to you guys. That is one of the few CBCS books that I have in the collection. I actually have more now than I've had in years past, but that was one that I picked up for a favorable price. This next book is important because there are a lot of people in the universe that is associated with Peter Parker and Spider-Man. None of them are potentially more important than this character right here. This is the first appearance of his wife, Mary Jane Watson. This is issue number 42 of Amazing Spider-Man. She appears, I do believe, on the very last page of this and utters some really famous words. So really cool book, really awesome piece of history that I wanted to make sure that I share with you guys. The cover of that is also pretty cool. A little purple, little blue going on. I dig that one for certain. This next one is here just because it's a really cool cover. Like, to be honest with you, it's a cool cover featuring a cool villain that is in that Spider-Man universe. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 20. I've had this book in the collection for several years, and I keep talking about the fact that I am going to upgrade it because this one has a big, where's that spot? Right there, big spot right there. I am going to upgrade this at some point, but I absolutely love this cover, the simplicity of it, the colors, the palette, the fact that it's overlooking this dark gray New York skyline. I dig this book. I dig that book for a lot of reasons. Speaking of books that I dig, I'll show you this one. I pulled this one in because of the story arc and the importance of the story arc. But I also selected it because of the cover. This is Web of Spider-Man issue number 32, and this is the fourth part of the Kraven's The Last Hunt story arc. Now, I should have pulled in issue number 1 of that story arc, but I chose this one again because I think the cover of this is much, much better. And it's fantastic. My buddy Randy Resnake actually did a cover recreation of this one for me that is sitting in my art portfolio. I absolutely love this cover. I will tell you again, with Kraven's The Last Hunt, it is a story arc that I read that I did not appreciate the very first time that I read it. I had to read it a second time before I really appreciated how well written that story is. And if you have not read Kraven's The Last Hunt, I encourage you to treat yourself. Treat yourself if you are a Spider-Man fan. Check it out. I think that, fingers crossed, you will enjoy it. Spider-Man's first volume, which ran from ASM 1 through 441, has a huge number of first appearances, and so this next stretch here will be a couple of really important first appearances. First up, we have Amazing Spider-Man issue number 14, and this is the first appearance of the Green Goblin, and a really cool book. Don't pay any attention to the label. That is Hobgoblin up there, but it's a Green Goblin appearance. But this is a book that I actually sent in to get the custom label from the folks over at CGC when they were rolling these out. I had a chance to send a book in to get that label, and I didn't want to send the Hobgoblin because my copy wasn't that great, but you can't go wrong with this one right here, issue number 14 of ASM. And again, on the back, it says first appearance of Green Goblin, who goes on to become Norman Osborn, or revealed that it is Norman Osborn. So definitely a cool book right there. Again, a lot of great first appearances in volume 1, a lot of great villains introduced that are important and core to who Spider-Man is, because a hero many times is judged by his villains. This one is the origin and first appearance of Doc Ock, who went on to marry Peter's aunt, which is just completely inappropriate, but this is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 3. This was one of the very last books that I picked up when I completed my full run of Amazing Spider-Man volume 1 through the present day. That was one of the last books that I picked up, and I'm very thankful I was able to score that one. This is a really cool book. I can't remember where I got this. I want to say either online. I think this was online. And I picked it up raw, sent it in, had it graded. This is the first appearance of Doctor Doom outside of the Fantastic Four. It's also a really cool cover. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 5, and a lot of people love Doctor Doom, so I wanted to at least include his early appearance in Amazing Spider-Man. So there you go, issue number 5, issue number 3, couple of really cool books right there. All right, so now we are into the honorable mentions. And again, if you haven't seen the first installment of this, I encourage you to go back and watch it, because there are some also really awesome books, not just in terms of price, but also in terms of scope in that first video. So if you have not seen it, I definitely encourage you to check that one out. This first book is the first appearance of a character that I believe is underrated, undervalued, underutilized, whatever you want to call it. It's an awesome character from the 90s that should be brought back, because he is a dope character, at least in my mind. This is the first appearance the first full appearance of Cardiac, who is actually a doctor doing some bad stuff, and he and Spider-Man, you know, have a little entanglement. But this is also the first appearance of Cletus Cassidy, who goes on to become Carnage. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 344. So really cool book right here. Cardiac was just a fantastic character that I enjoyed back as a preteen when I was reading comics for the very first time. And speaking of characters that I enjoy from my childhood, I had to include this one as an honorable mention, because this character actually came up during a recent live stream. This is the first appearance of Speedball. You cannot go wrong with Speedball. You gotta love comics from the 90s. This is Speedball Amazing Spider-Man Annual issue number 22. I have raw copies of this, but I also went out and picked up a graded copy as well. Unfortunately, it has off-white pages, but that is perfectly fine. This next book is here because I think that the cover is fantastic. It is a fantastic cover. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 55. Going back to some Doc Ock action. This is Big Face Ock. Big Face Doc Ock right there. I just love this cover. I just love it. For a while when I was in California, this actually hung on the front wall of the comic book room just because I enjoyed looking at it. And the reflection of Spidey in the glasses is incredibly well done. So the very last book that I'll show you, again, is just another book that's just a fantastic cover. Another character that is closely associated with Spider-Man. This is the Black Cat appearance on the cover of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 607 by the incredibly talented J. Scott Campbell. His ability to draw the female form is fantastic, so I had to include this one as a little bit of an honorable mention. All right, so there you have it. That is my second installment of must-have Spider-Man books. If you missed the first part, I definitely encourage you to go back and check it out, because it is fantastic. And if you enjoyed this video, I want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button and leave a comment behind. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel for some reason or another, I want to encourage you to do so now. Go ahead and tap that button, turn on notifications, and that way you won't miss out on any of the content that I release from the channel. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.